Hi, this is Christian, and welcome back to NFL Updates Express, your weekly dose of NFL news. Coming your way, the NFL Draft 2016. After the Rams moved from St. Louis to Los Angeles, they traded up to get the number 1 overall pick from the Tennessee Titans, and now they hold that even though they gave up a boatload of picks to get there. And when a team trades up to number 1, chances are they're getting a quarterback. The options for them would either be Carson Wentz from North Dakota State or Jared Goff from California. Both of the quarterbacks I think will have a successful NFL career, but it's picking the right one that could potentially lead the Rams to a Super Bowl one day. And right now, a lot of people are saying it will be Jared Goff, but if I was them, I would pick Carson Wentz to lead the way. First up is the quarterback position. Now, we already know about Carson Wentz and Jared Goff probably going number 1 and number 2, I would expect. But there's some other quarterbacks that could make their way into the first round or the early second round. Leading the way is Paxton Lynch from Memphis. And he's an interesting guy, and a lot of people believe that he has the most potential out of every quarterback to be an elite star. And he could go to a team like the Buffalo Bills or the New York Jets, who are pretty close to the playoffs with their roster now, but they need a quarterback that can get them over the top and maybe win a couple of playoff games. Some other quarterbacks that will be considered are Connor Cook from Michigan State and also Christian Hackenberg. And if we rewind about a year or a year and a half ago, a lot of people thought that Christian Hackenberg could be the number 1 overall pick, but after a tumultuous last year for him, it just wasn't as great and he dropped down the draft boards. 2 other sleeper quarterback names to keep your eye on are Cardale Jones of Ohio State and also Jacoby Brissett of NC State. If you're a team entering this year's draft and you're in need of a wide receiver, yes, I'm talking to you, Bengals and Vikings, then this is the draft class for you. Leading the way is Will Fuller from Notre Dame, and he has a couple of drop issues, but if he can get that down, I think he'll be a solid receiver. Some other great receivers at the top of the draft class include Laquan Treadwell from Ole Miss, the explosive receiver from Baylor, Corey Coleman, and also Josh Doctson from TCU. I think Doctson will be the best receiver out of all these names you hear from me today. I just think his skill set, his vertical, and everything he has to offer can eventually get him to maybe be a top 10 receiver in the National Football League. Some other names to watch out for, especially at the beginning of the second round to mid-second round, include Sterling Shepard from Oklahoma and Braxton Miller from The Ohio State. Well, the tight end class isn't deep, but there's a couple of quality names at the top. Leading the way is Henry Hunter from Arkansas, and he reminds me a lot of the Panthers tight end Greg Olsen in his prime, and he still is, and I think that Henry Hunter could be a similar type of player. And there's also Nick Vannett from Ohio State, and I think he could be a great blocking tight end and also catch a couple of passes for a team as a backup tight end. The running back class isn't deep, but there's a lot of great running backs at the top of the class. Leading the way is Ezekiel Elliott from Ohio State. And he reminds me a lot of, well, this is kind of a lofty expectation, but Jamal Charles. Just the way that he cuts through holes and gets through the open holes with his dynamic speed. And in the open field, he might be one of the best players in the NFL when he gets there. Also, Derrick Henry from Alabama, and he reminds me a lot of LeGarrette Blount, the way that he can just truck someone over and get 10 yards easily. So I think both of these running backs will have a successful future in the NFL. Next up, the offensive line. Now, leading the way in this group is the big lineman from Ole Miss, Laramie Tunsil. And I think he's one of the more surefire picks in this draft, and I don't really know if he can bust. I think he's one of the great linemen in college, and I think he'll be transitioning over to one of the great linemen in the NFL. Some other linemen to keep your eye on in the first round, and even second round, LaRaven Clark from Texas Tech, Ronnie Staley from Notre Dame, Jason Spriggs from Indiana, and he's on the rise, and Jack Conklin from Michigan State. Arguably the best position class in the entire draft, the defensive line. Now leading the way is Joey Bosa from Ohio State and DeForest Buckner from Oregon. I think both of these players will be stars in the NFL. It may be a tough transition, but I think they'll catch on pretty quickly and should be stars, and they should go in the top 5-7 picks or so. Next in line are a pair of Clemson defensive ends and Kevin Dodd and also Shaq Lawson. But unfortunately, with these guys, well, usually when a team has two great players who go in the draft at the same time at the same position, usually one is pretty good in the NFL and the other just simply isn't. So, who will it be that is bust and who will be a superstar? Well, I guess time will tell. Another player I'm impressed by is Emmanuel Ogbah from Oklahoma State, and I think he could go at the end of the first round or maybe early second round. The secondary class is very solid, and leading the way is Jalen Ramsey from FSU. I think he'll be one of another surefire picks in this draft, and whoever gets him, I would probably say the San Diego Chargers have a pretty good chance if they don't trade down to snatch him up, and he could be a solid corner for years to come for them. Some other great corners include Vernon Hargreaves from Florida, Eli Apple from Ohio State, Mackenzie Alexander from Clemson, and Kendall Fuller from Virginia Tech, and he's pretty interesting. I bet you he would have gone in the first round if he didn't have his knee injury, but now he's probably exiled to the second or even third round, depending on if teams are scared of his injury history. The safeties, well, there's a couple of good ones. Sua Cravens, he's a linebacker / safety, and it depends what team gets him, what they want to put him at. Von Bell from Ohio State, and also the hard-hitting safety Carl Joseph from West Virginia. The linebackers are next up, and leading the way is Miles Jack from UCLA. Now, a lot of teams might be scared off due to his knee injury, but I think he'll be a pretty solid player, and once maybe a top 5 pick, he may drop 5 or 10 spots, who knows, but I think Miles Jack should be a solid player as long as his knee holds up. Some other linebackers to look out for will include Leonard Floyd from Georgia and Reggie Ragland from Alabama. I was just going to name this section Roberto Aguayo, but, I just didn't think that'd be fair. But all jokes aside, the best prospect in the specialist section is Roberto Aguayo from FSU, and he's been solid during his tenure there. And I think he might be the highest kicker drafted since Sebastian Janikowski was drafted in the first round many years ago. And I think Roberto Aguayo, he won't be anywhere close to the first round, but maybe the 5th round he could go.